Hello, everyone. Woohoo! I'm doing it. We're going live. Hello, welcome. I would like to take a moment here at the beginning to thank my moderator. This is the first time I've ever done a live, so please bear with me. My moderator's name is Sue Grochmal. You can find a link to her website down below. She is an incredible quantum healing hypnotherapist. I just had a session with her a couple of weeks ago. So here we go. Now, I've had a few questions that have been posed to me on my weekly soul sampler when I announced that I was going to be doing this live. And I just want to ask everybody, if possible, to focus your questions more on things that are related to the collective as opposed to personal questions. So I am going to go and have a look at some of those personal questions. And every week I will bring a couple of them forward to answer. But starting this week, I just want to focus on questions related to the collective. So let's start out with one of the questions that came through this week. And I found it really interesting because it reminded me of something that I had looked at years ago, almost 20 years ago. So this question is in regards to something that is known as the Christum, and it is about working with our Kundalini energy at the time when our moon sign, when the moon actually goes through our sun sign every month. And I guess this has been presented on several channels in the last couple of weeks. And I just wanted to let everyone know that this information is actually been around for quite a long time. I first heard about it about 20 years ago, watching someone called Santos Bonacci, and I've put a link to that original video below so you can have a look at it to get more information and go more into the source information, because I believe he even wrote a book about this topic. But let's start off with looking at the cards and finding out whether or not this kind of work with the collective and within our own energy system is valuable for us as individuals and as a collective at this time. So I'm going to bring the screen down. Let's move it down like so that you can see what I'm doing with the cards. I'm beginning to shuffle, and we'll shuffle 3 times. The whole purpose of shuffling is really to alchemize the energy of all the different archetypes in the tarot and also of the elements and their suits. So I've just alchemized with regards to this question about working with this energy once a month as the sun moves through, as the moon moves through your sun sign. So let's have a look at this. We're going to start off with us as the collective and what we need to know about this. All right. And then we're going to go past, present, and future. There we go. See those cards? And then we're going to look at some advice. Wow. Okay. Some advice regarding this practice. So I'm going to actually turn you up to my face again now. And then I'm going to look at the specific cards and talk a little bit about each one and how they relate to this question. So to begin with, it's showing us as we're all feeling quite heart sore in a way. We're in a way grasping at techniques, tools, resources direction. And this is a lot about the old stories, the old patterns. So while I believe this is a beautiful thing to become more aware of the potency of our Kundalini energy and our ability to tap into cosmic energy, I feel like the study itself warrants more focus. However, just grabbing a practice, there's so many different practices available to us. And sort of, it's almost like our motivation for grabbing onto that practice is what's really the biggest consideration here. Because if we're coming at it already in a place of feeling really afraid, look at the answer to this question, the Five of Swords, which is, this is heartache and this is defeat. It's mental defeat. So it's like we're already standing on a platform of, I'm not saying all of you, but I'm saying the general consensus around going quite headstrong into some of these ancient wisdoms is that we can, in effect, take them out of context. So what I'm being shown here is that this study in itself, which relates to astrology and takes us into a really ancient system of different practices, different initiatory experiences. It's actually a complete system. And if you take a part of it out and just practice that without being fully grounded in the larger system, then it at the best, it's really not going to have potentially the desired effect. So in the past, it feels like we've had systems that were whole and they've been kind of pulled apart. So out of context, we could be feeling a bit like we're chasing things around. You see this infinity loop. It's like we may feel better for a while and then we're back to chasing this energy. And this looks like we're maybe needing to stop looking outside of us for practices and solutions and really tune inward energetically. So again, here we have the ability to calm ourselves, to step outside of this realm of the thinking, all of these swords, and go into a deeper inner contemplation. So it's very interesting. When I was first introduced to this practice many years ago, it felt to me like it wove in with some other practices that I've heard about. And it really has a lot to do with learning more about astrology and about the significance of what happens as the moon moves through its cycle of 28 days and how it goes in and out of the different signs. So to me, this is a beautiful place to start, is by learning more about the system. And, there's a lot of ways you can work with that information. I've been practicing this for years, where I look at the whole calendar of the year astrologically. I look at the solstices, the equinoxes, the cross quarters. I look at the moon phases. I look at the full moons and the new moons, as you know, of course, if you're following my channel. So the whole system can be really helpful in helping us feel like we're part of something profound. We're part of a cosmic cycle. We're part of a solar cycle, a lunar cycle, a star cycle, learning about the precession of the equinox and how we go through these phases every 26,000 years and how we've arrived back at a full circle of that phase. And even in our precession, we are at a full circle in ending the age of ending the age of Pisces and moving into the age of Aquarius. So the system as a whole feels really beautiful to begin to understand, learn more about, but to take one practice that's actually quite advanced out of that system and just play around with it on its own, not really getting a strong yes on that. What I'm getting is that if we can allow this to inspire our curiosity to learn more, as opposed to grabbing this system and, as I said before, kind of playing around with it. Okay, let's go on to another question. So I've had people asking me regularly, when is this larger experience of disclosure going to happen on the global stage? And when can we look forward to finally a lot of these truths that we've been aware of for some of us for decades coming out more into mainstream awareness? So, I don't know, those of you that have been following me for a while and know that I've been on this path of truth and awareness for decades, for pretty close to 30 years. For me, I'm already in a place of, wow, this is just incredible. Like, so many people are aware and awake and waking up every day more and more. It's one of those, is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? And I definitely see the glass as half full because of what I've witnessed over the last 30 years. This is such a turnaround collectively. But let's look more specifically at when we can start to see these massive waves, turning, the turning points. So I'm going to put you down again to my cards. There you go. And we'll shuffle again for a moment. I cut the deck, shuffle again. And then I always like to separate the deck into 3 piles using my left hand. The left hand is connected to the right brain, which is more the intuitive side of our brain. And then I just choose one of the piles. And here we go. We're going to have a look at when can we expect to see more evidence of truth being revealed on the larger stage. Wow. Judgment in the present moment. Okay. 2 of Wands in the near future. Okay. My. Okay, let's talk about this a little bit, everybody. We've got 2 queens facing each other at the top here. We're looking at, let's talk about this from the perspective of, I want to call it like feminine wisdom. And really what that means to me, feminine wisdom means, if you think about the feminine, it has an approach that's really holistic. It's not so much like, let's just solve this one problem. So the one problem is, gosh, we need this truth to come out yesterday, decades ago, eons ago, maybe. So that's the one problem. And the more masculine perspective of going about problem solving, which is really valuable in its appropriate place, under the appropriate kind of context and circumstances, the masculine perspective is, let's go directly to a solution and make this happen. Step A, B, C, D, done. And, we've been encultured in a very masculine dominant paradigm, which we have been trained to think logistically in a straight line and to just treat problems with that step A, B, C, D approach. Now, let's talk about the divine feminine. Do you see these 2 ladies here facing each other? Coming at this from different perspectives. So the feminine approach, the divine feminine approach, which doesn't necessarily mean just exclusively men or women, but this approach is much more holistic. It's much more multifaceted. So the feminine approach says, well, we've got this situation going on here, but it's a lot more complex than just bringing out information. There's a really big energy of what this infers and how this affects us all emotionally, the emotional effect of trauma on the collective. So you've ever heard about those things? Well, interestingly, the analogy that the guides are presenting me is like, if we ever swallow poison, they say the worst thing you can do is to induce something that makes you vomit it back up, because it burns on the way down, it burns on the way back up. This is kind of what I'm being shown here. We've got this Queen of Swords saying, yeah, we need to administer the right amount of truth piece by piece. But the Queen of Cups, she's really invested in keeping us sane, in keeping us as a collective emotionally able to handle what comes up. So, like, as this information comes out, if it comes out too quickly, it's going to have such a devastating effect. In a way, it could create a demise that is worse, or I don't want to say worse, but in a way almost as bad as what's happening, because too much change, the reactions that people are going to have, the kind of trauma, mental crises that the collective would go into if this all came out at once, would overwhelm every system we have. So here's our challenge, everybody, is we've been waiting, but be aware as we're waiting, the hanging man in the past, be aware that in this waiting, we've become incredibly astute. We are gathering information, we are gathering perspective, we are growing. This card has a lot to do with growing into the maturity. It's kind of like the cocoon in it, the caterpillar in its cocoon. Like, we've got to grow mature enough emotionally to handle the big reveals. And that's every one of us taking responsibility for that. It's like we are saying, okay, is it just about the information coming out, or is it about preparing the systems to kind of be underneath that revelation and support the change that's going to result as these truths come to the surface? So what I'm being shown, and please do not get too wound up about this, I'm being shown really we are doubling. So this is kind of like the exponential thesis of everything doubling. So in 2 days, notice this, pay attention. They're saying there's a doubling effect. In 2 days, we're going to see twice as much coming out. In 2 weeks, we're going to see twice as much being presented as 2 weeks ago. In 2 months, we're going to see it double again. Guess what that means for 2 years down the road? It's a done deal. We are being taken very methodically, not just from, the movement we're calling the white hats, but we are being energetically from spirit, from divine consciousness. We are being gently guided. This is a practical card. It is about creating the systems that will replace the old as it continues to topple. This is an energy card. It is about pacing ourselves, because if it comes too quickly, none of us, as far as I can see, very few of us are going to be really prepared for that kind of a tidal wave. So work collectively, work energetically, prepare yourself emotionally, work with your own friends, neighbors, family, people around you, gently working them, gently preparing them, because the more we have that happening, the better it's going to be for everybody. Okay. Oh, wow. So we've got these two cards on the sidebar here. And the sidebar cards are really just like an additional chapter, an additional piece of information. I feel like we're seeing, again, this energy of, we're noticing here, the feminine, the masculine is underneath this card. The Hierophant is about our systems of institutions, like the medical system, the education system. These systems are going to be one by one approached and brought to justice, brought out in the open. So again, it feels like it's almost going to be easier for the collective to manage focusing on one system at a time and really revealing that and staying back a little bit from this whole big picture. So many of us, I feel like, when we wake up, we want to tell people, oh my gosh, can't you see the whole big picture? It's all a big ruse and this, that, and the other. However, we're looking at how important it is to dismantle one particular institution at a time. Oh, yeah. And look at this. On the other side, as much as possible, everyone here, if you can get into the playfulness of this and really trusting that you're making a difference. You are making a difference. Every time you have a little win on behalf of the collective, you've managed to express some piece of information to a friend, a family member, a coworker, whatever, and you figured out a way to do it where you didn't just push them away, but you actually got them to ask some questions. This is all about encouraging people to ask questions, to get curious. If we confront them with the whole big story at once, we're going to terrify them. So it's energetically just coming in from different angles, because everybody's got to find their moment where they're ready to start opening their eyes, like sleepy bears coming out of hibernation. If we push them, they're going to be mad, and they might even come at us. Well, many of us have had that experience of them coming at us. So we're going to go gentle. We're going to apply that feminine, holistic approach, which is coming at this from a lot of different angles, continuing to work with the energy as it exponentially increases, because we're giving birth to something here, everyone. And some of us have been in this process for a long time. And I want to encourage you that it's really moving now. It's really moving. Okay, so we just got a few minutes left. And I see there's all kinds of questions coming up in the chat. And I'm so glad. Thank you, Sue, for being over there moderating things. Because once I'm in this mode, as you can see, I'm just in and I'm going for it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through your questions thoroughly that are in the chat. For next week, I'm going to pick a few that are highlighted, things where a lot of people have been asking about those things. And then I will pick, hopefully, at least one personal question just randomly out of a hat every week. This week, please bear with me and thank you for your patience, because I am just learning the ropes. It was even at the minute as I was about to figure out how to go on to live studio, I couldn't find my way to live studio and I was in a panic. So thank you for hanging in there. I am going to get better at this as time goes by. I want to end off by sharing with you a piece of information that came through one of my readings this week. So I've mentioned before that there are these themes that move through my weekly reading experiences. And this last week, one major theme with some specific information related through someone's guides came through. And I'd like to share this with you. It was brought into my awareness through different perspectives that people's guides were showing in the readings, that we are facing down our past life, intergenerational, ancient, ancestral experiences of making oaths, making vows, and making contracts with dark force energy on this planet. And it feels like we're at a turning point where it's really important that we break those vows intentionally. And so I'm also going to put a link below to a couple of conversations that I've seen that are related to this. And I want to pull some cards on this, and then I'll end off with what I've been doing to break these vows and these commitments or contracts and oaths. So let's look at what Spirit says about doing this right now. Beautiful. So if you're not aware, what I've learned over the years about these types of things, according to universal law, everything on this plane is associated with the experience of free will. So it's essential for these dark force controllers to inform us both verbally and in some kind of documentation of their intentions. And so the real ruse is that either we don't see it, we're not paying attention closely enough. Some of us see it, a lot of us don't. A lot of these things just get buried in a lot of other data, and we're swamped with so much information that we aren't able to see clearly. Like, they've dropped this, not only a hint, in most cases, it's literally spoken clear, but they cloak it around some other kind of conversation, almost like they plant it in, and it's very confusing and we don't see it. Well, what came through in this reading this week is that, because a lot of us say, why is it that some of us saw so clearly what was going on as this was unfolding, 2.5, 3 years ago? Why did some of us see it and others just seem to, even super intelligent people, spiritually activated people, just couldn't see it for some reason? Well, what was shown to me in this reading was it has to do with these vows, these cords, these oaths, and these contracts. And we all have them. All of us humans have them. But to what degree? It's based on a saturation amount. So, for example, some of us in our past life and our ancestral ancient history, we could have a lot of those contracts, cords, and vows, and others a little less. And some of us have done really, really a lot of intentional healing, trauma healing, initiatory practices that have over time sort of lessened the potency of those oaths and contracts and vows. So that's another way that we can be less influenced by them. But what I was shown in this reading is that we are actually, basically, some of us were so saturated with these vows that when this agenda was unfolding, we couldn't see it. We didn't have the clarity of perspective because we were contracted into these vows and oaths so heavily that even with all of our awareness and spiritual intention of activation, those doors were closed. So it's kind of like a type of programming on those very ancient esoteric levels. And so basically, those of us who have woken up are, to some degree, less affected, less saturated with those vows and oaths. However, what do we want to do with that? That's like a real, in a way, to me, blessing. We've been blessed for whatever reason, karmically, that we contracted in, coming in with less saturation of those vows. Let's look at what we need to know about that. First of all, there we are seeing ourselves as, we've succeeded in overcoming so many of the hurdles put in front of us. And what do we need to do with this? We need to continue to do the clearing of the cords. But how we do it is in the opposite way of how they were applied. This is what I'm being shown. So these cords were applied with fear, with hatred, with, terror. And they basically put us into a state of shock, like deer in the headlights. Our former selves, our ancient ancestors went into shock, and they've been to some degree in that shock state ever since. So the way that we heal that, you can think about somebody who's literally in shock, like in physical shock. If you show up at an accident, someone's in shock, we want to start by bringing them comfort. We want to hydrate them. We want to put a warm blanket over them. So as we're doing this, we're not going at it with, oh, I'm so angry that this is happening and that you've done this to me and my ancestors and so on. We don't want to fight that cold, calculating energy with the same energy. We want to basically surround it in warmth, in comfort, in love. This is the card related to nature, the natural world. So what I'm being shown is that we activate ourselves through the natural world, through being comforted in nature, and then we begin to make these declarations, to cut these cords, to break these contracts, to break the oaths. So it begins by comforting ourselves. So when we make these declarations, because I'm getting that just to speak it and to just throw it out there and be like, so irate that this has even happened is actually not going to be super effective. I get that we've got to gently, the same as the other perspective was showing us, we've got to gently surround this. I'm being shown that almost like an intervention. This is a kind of spiritual intervention is what we're doing. We're doing a spiritual intervention surrounding those dark force energies with this beautiful, natural human instinct and dignity, which is us connected to nature and to the cosmos. And we're very patient in this process. So again, I see this all the time with my clients, with my students, when we're working on doing ancestral healing, for example, that if we try to just get in and fix something fast, again, that's that male energy of like, let's just solve this problem in a linear way. It doesn't work as well for really healing these large, very complex challenges that we're facing as a collective. So we're going to talk about this more in upcoming weeks. I'm going to bring forward actual statements, but I want to start off by saying, let's surround this with divine feminine energy, which is miles to go. There's plenty of time to do this. It's about how we do it. It's about how we do it, not when we do it. We're starting, just acknowledging it today is enough. Love yourself, comfort yourself, wrap yourself in a warm blanket, drink lots of fluid, be kind to yourself. This is really big. We've got to love each other and ourselves through this healing. My blessings to you all. I am looking so forward to getting better at these lives, to being able to interact more with you as you're coming onto the chat. I'm really looking forward to looking at the chat and responding next week with our live. Have a beautiful week, everyone. Blessings.